Have you ever seen two robots fight? Hello everyone. Today we will witness a game from the TCEC Season 25 Superfinal in which two chess computers, Stockfish and Leela Chess Zero, play an absolutely brilliant game of chess spanning 94 moves and filled with numerous brilliances. The game begins with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop e5, the Ruy Lopez. Black plays a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, and bishop e7, entering the closed Ruy Lopez. White continues with rook e1, b5, bishop e3, d6, c3, knight a5 attacking the bishop, bishop c2, c5, d4, queen c7, knight bd2, and knight c6. This is where the opening book ended. You see, when two engines play each other, they will play the same opening over and over again and will make draws over and over again. So what we do is we set the openings for the engines to play in order for them to get creative and interesting positions that us feeble humans can learn from. The engines now start thinking for themselves, and Stockfish plays the move d5 attacking the knight. Leela plays knight a7, and then the fish plays h3 restricting the development of the black light square bishop. Black develops the bishop to d7, and then white plays b3 preventing c4. Black castles, and then white plays a4 expanding on the queen side with ideas of developing the bishop to a3, opening the a-file for the rook and supporting a potential c4, trying to close down the queen side in hopes of a full king side attack. Stockfish achieves this idea later in the game. Rook b8, improving the rook and anticipating a potential open b-file. Knight f1, rerouting the knight to a better square, e3 or g3. Black also tries to reroute his knight to a better square. Stockfish now moves the knight to e3 where it sits comfortably and may exploit the f5 square in the future. Leela now plays the absurd bishop e8. This move looks meaningless, but the idea is that the c8 knight can't do much on the queen side, and so it will use the newly vacated e7 square to reroute to the king side. White now plays c4 supporting the center and looking to close the queen side in order to launch a king side attack. We now get h6, a small improving move taking away the g5 square from white's pieces. Bishop d2, improving the bishop and connecting the rooks, giving white the flexibility to easily move his rooks to either the queen or king side. Stockfish now plays bishop c3, opening up the queen's control of the d-file and therefore setting up the tactic. Knight takes e5, and after that, d6 with a pawn fork. Black now moves the knight, negating white's tactical trick. Stockfish now improves the knight by moving it to f5. Leela responds with b takes a4 and b takes a4, and we now see the rook on b8 that Leela put there many moves ago come into the game. White then plays a5. Stockfish's light square bishop is very poor, so this move a5 gives the light square bishop the possibility to go to a4 where it could become very strong in the future. Leela now improves the knight and Stockfish plays king h2. The idea being that the fish wants to play g3 attacking the knight, but that would lose the h3 pawn, so it first defends the h3 pawn with the king and prepares g3. Black plays g6 attacking the knight, and white responds with g3. Stockfish doesn't mind trading the knights off and opening the g-file as the fish is better equipped to handle the opening of the position due to the better development. White's rooks are also connected and will take control over the g-file if this trade occurs. White can also not just win the pawn on h6, due to king g7, and then after knight g4, black will get the pawn back. Leela retreats the knight, and so does Stockfish. Black improves the bishop, and white temporarily employs a plan of moving the knights backwards in order to allow the pawns to go forwards. Black also retreats the knight to make way for the other pieces. Stockfish now plays queen d2, improving the queen and preparing to transfer the rooks over to the king side. The two engines now enter a little improvement phase in which they both improve and shuffle their pieces, making sure that they are on perfect squares before any further decisions. White improves the rook by moving it to f1. The rook will be crucial later down the line when the f-pawn gets moving. Queen c7 and rook a to e1. Bishop g7, preparing to bring one of the knights back to f6. Stockfish now makes a small king-side expansion with g4. Leela responds with knight f6, and then Stockfish plays f3, securing the kingside pawn structure. Stockfish now plans to further improve its pieces and launch a decisive pawn break later down the line. Leela also expands and tries to clamp down on the f4 pawn break. Knight e2. Stockfish will now reroute its pieces and prepare the f4 pawn break. If Stockfish can land the f4 pawn break successfully, then it will be winning. h5, knight c1, king h8, and knight d3. Leela now plays the unusual knight to g8 with ideas of f6, securing the kingside structure. Stockfish responds with rook f2, h4, and rook ef1. Stockfish uses all its pieces to prepare the f4 pawn break. Leela plays rook b7, and then Stockfish lands the first major punch, f4. A brilliant move that looks almost impossible due to black's pawn control over that square. Leela takes, and Stockfish follows up with an even more beautiful move, knight takes f4. Leela responds with knight f6, ignoring the hanging knight. If Leela took the knight, then Stockfish would have great pressure after rook takes f4. All of the white pieces would be flooding down the board to attack the black king. In this position, Stockfish uncorks another brilliant move. Many players would just move the hanging knight, but Stockfish instead plays queen e1, making a small improvement to the queen and begging black to take the knight. Stockfish recaptures with the rook, and now the queen on e1 has come alive, attacking the h4 pawn. Leela plays queen d8, and if you get greedy here and play queen takes h4, then you will be punished swiftly by knight takes g4 check. Stockfish plays g5, knight h5, and then takes on h4 with the rook. Leela played queen takes g5, and the game continued with bishop takes g7 check. Knight takes g7, and then rook to g1. Stockfish's two rooks are immensely active and are applying a ton of pressure to the black position. Queen f6, and then Stockfish plays queen to g3 with a total of 19 points of material staring the black king down on the g and h files. Leela now plays this lovely move bishop f5, putting the bishop on a square where it is completely hanging. The idea being that after Stockfish takes, which is what was played, Leela will infiltrate with rook e2 check. White plays king h1, and for some reason, Leela chose rook b7 instead of taking the bishop on e2. Ultimately, both moves were losing, and there is probably an insane engine idea that Leela saw as to why it thought this was better. Stockfish responds with knight f2, and Leela then plays rook e1, prioritizing a rook trade over the free c2 bishop. The game continued with knight e4, rook takes g1, king takes g1, and then queen d4 check. This position looks very scary for white's king, but it is actually completely fine, and Stockfish is completely winning. The fish played king h2. Leela responded with knight takes f5, and now I ask you to please like, subscribe, and then pause the video to find the brilliant move that Stockfish played in this position. In this position, Stockfish sacrificed the rook. Rook takes h7, king takes h7, and then queen g5. Leela now played queen e5 check, and Stockfish responded with knight g3, taking advantage of the pinned f5 knight. The game continued with queen b2, queen d2, and king h8. Leela then plays queen e5, king g1, and rook e8. Stockfish then played queen h6, and the engines did a little repeat before continuing with the game. Stockfish then played bishop d3, making a small improvement to the position. Here the engines shuffled a bit more after queen e1 check. Stockfish now finds a path to improving the position by means of pushing the h-pawn. The engines start checking each other's kings, and Stockfish runs the king to g4. Both engines continue the shuffling with queen a1, bishop c2, queen c3, and queen f4. Stockfish brings its queen back and is ready to now attack through a different front. Leela responded with rook e1, and Stockfish played queen g5 check, sending the king to f8, and then queen d8 check, preparing to win the d6 pawn. Leela plays rook e8, and then Stockfish takes the d6 pawn with check. Leela moves the king, and Stockfish comes back to f4, and we have almost the exact same position as a few moves ago, except Leela has just lost the d6 pawn. The game continued king h8, king h5, queen f6, and the queen h6, forcing the queen trade and simplifying into a winning endgame. Queen takes h6, and then king takes h6. Leela plays rook g8, and Stockfish plays h5. The game continued rook g2, bishop e4, rook g4, d6 advancing the pawn, rook g8, bishop c6, rook d8, d7 tying down the rook, king g8, king g5, king h7, king f6, and now Leela played rook c8, just giving up the rook. And then Stockfish took and promoted to a queen. But wait, if you promote to a queen as many of us would, the game would end in a draw due to stalemate. That's why in this position, Stockfish promoted to a knight with forced mate in 6 coming. Stockfish then proceeds to execute the mate in 6, ending the game with a lovely discovered checkmate. Let me know in the comments if you like this video and want to see more of this content in the comments. Check the description for the links to my Lichess team and other platforms. Now go promote some pawns.